rural community like ours, prior to us existing, we didn't have a youth serving organization in Okanagan County. The young people that we serve at Fire are a group of young people who vary in ages from 12 to 24. About 30% of them who identify as LGBTQIA. In our housing programs, we have over 58% who are identifying as Latino, Native American, or African American youth, with primarily our population in Okanagan County being Latino and Native American young people. I believe we received the Washington Youth and Families Fund because we were serving rural young people who were primarily youth of color, and also we are the only provider who is out loud in our rural area about supporting LGBTQIA young people. Whenever somebody asks this question of what might it be like for a queer young person in Okanagan County, I think of this young person who came to visit us shortly after we opened Fire, and we had them come through the space and we gave them a tour, and they were super excited. And the specific quote that I remember them saying is, "I wanted to come visit because I wanted to know what it felt like to be in a place in my community where I felt accepted." Working with building changes, I think, has been, they have pretty much been a part of our learning journey. The biggest support that we were provided was really in ensuring that as a BIPOC-led organization, that we knew that we had the confidence and the ability to be in the housing landscape, that we had the right to be a housing provider in Washington. The Washington Youth and Families Fund is unique in that it provides organizations like ours. Like, I can't think of another funder that would have taken a chance on Fire. We know that a lot of rural spaces are places where young people are experiencing housing instability, but completely unseen because there isn't a place or a space for them to safely say, "I'm unsafe." And I think that this particular line of funding and the reasons why it emphasizes the populations that it does are because our communities are continuously unseen. And being a housing provider is serious. It's serious work. And I think although we all were helping out in helping young people navigate other people's housing systems, to be the provider, to develop a system, for our community, being such a young organization, I don't think we could have done it without the Washington Youth and Families Fund.
When the fund started in 2004, the idea of adding services to support households, but to also use those services to move people more towards housing stability, maybe even more quickly than a 2-year transitional housing program. It wasn't a novel idea because communities had been providing services to the people, to their neighbors, and to the people that they worked with for decades. But to have the service industry start doing that, the nonprofit industry take over that role, it wasn't unknown, but Washington Families Fund was really poised to launch that for the state in new ways that maybe we hadn't been thinking about before. That was one of the strengths in the beginning, and it has been the strength since the inception of the program. I think what's most unique about Building Changes and their work with the Washington Families Fund is that they're able to adapt and innovate and be creative in ways that state government simply can't. Their ability to really examine those practices, evaluate them, look at the data, and then bring them back even stronger into programs that are delivered by the nonprofits is one of its best qualities. You don't get that in mainstream service organizations or kind of mainstream funders. And also, one of the things that Building Changes was talking about long before it became more generally accepted in our narrative was equity. They have been working with diverse communities and supporting diverse communities since the very beginning. I think it's vital that the philanthropic community, the community in general, recognize the unique work of building changes and delivering on this fund, and know that it's innovators like this organization that are really leading the way in our state and perhaps even in our country in terms of addressing homelessness. Again, their commitment to creativity, flexibility. Government alone is not going to solve this problem with homelessness. The Washington Youth and Families Fund is important because of its unique position in our state to capitalize on this public and private partnership and investment. No other organization is doing anything like that. I hope that Washington Youth and Families Fund continues for another 20 years or longer, and I hope that we will continue to see support by both the state legislature and the philanthropic community in making these dreams for housing stability come true for the households they support. Most importantly, to help house and support people who have been unstably housed, vulnerable in the communities, find a way home.
We come from an indigenous culture, which means that there's value systems with respect, humility, and how to begin to understand that there's trust issues. And so we address those trust issues just by being open, transparent as possible in regards to how we provide that services.
Native people and culture are invisible in society. The limited services that are available to take care of them are not centering us, which is what makes Mother Nation, as well as the other Native organizations, different and special.
Keeping on like the uniqueness that we do have here is looking at the cultural part and providing that cultural service, which is that we have an understanding of some of the barriers that other orgs, whether it be Native American or non-Native American or Indigenous or non-Indigenous, is that there's an uncomfortability in engaging or reaching out for those services. So there's some of the uniquenesses that we do have when we engage people in their services, whether, as we say, we meet them where they're at. But we have a cultural understanding of historical and intergenerational trauma as we engage those services. Housing for us has been connected to the land, and culture is part of us that connects us to that land, where housing is just something that shelters us. And when we say family, it's a broader, extensive family. And so that's what Building Changes has offered, that definition that we carry of family, and that's why culture is really important to understand what that definition of family means.
It's always been a delight to work with Building Changes and utilizing the Washington Youth and Families Fund, because it's so easy and simple to have a conversation about how to spend this money in a way that's going to be the most impactful in our communities, which has already been inundated with funds that are difficult to use. And so the Washington Youth and Family Fund, with being so flexible in what we're able to do to assist our people, which is what they set out to do, makes the work incredibly easy.
Flex funding is very unique in regards to the accessibility and the distribution of it, without having strings attached to it, because part of that historical process of distrust and understanding of governance. And with Washington Youth and Family Funds allowing that flex funding, that comes from the community that is entrusting them for the mission that they have. And I tend to think that's what makes Washington Youth and Family Funds very unique in that concept, and why the community should give that is because we're a part of that community and they're part of our community. It's Washington as a state. It's the youth within it, which is our future. It's the families and the family units that support those youth to become those people of the future. So when you're supporting that, you're supporting our future as Washingtonians, as individuals of the United States, and as people just generally that live on this planet. We're all supporting each other and we all have families.
We are the recipients of the legacy of genocide. And I think that alongside with that, when you tie it into the culture of Washington of wanting to encourage that social change, that needs to coincide with action. And I think that Washington Youth and Family Fund, specifically when it comes to our community, is a way to do that. As Native people, we think of the 7 generations ahead of us. We also think about the 7 generations behind us. We keep those in mind as we walk into the future.
I can't think of another funder that would have taken a chance on fire.
I hope that Washington Youth and Families Fund continues for another 20 years or longer.